Today on the show, super excited to have a colleague, but also a very dear friend, someone that I have worked with for a very long time in the sports space, and that is strength coach, athletic performance coach, volleyball guru, Missy Mitchell-McBeth. So, love having her on. She was actually on when we first launched the podcast, way before we were really doing that. Like maybe one of the top first three, I think, videos. And so we have her back because we're at the time of year, if you're listening to this in real time, where we're transitioning in the volleyball world from school volleyball to club volleyball. Missy knows about all of this. And she came out with her book recently, which is Developmental to Division One, Strength and Conditioning for the Volleyball Athlete. So you're going to need to pick this up. We're dropping it in the show notes. The book link is there. But if you want to play volleyball and you play now and you want to play at the college level, she's got everything you need to know. So Missy, I'm going to let you add on to that and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump in.
First, thanks for having me on a second time. It's always an honor to get asked back. That means you didn't butcher the first round. Just quick rundown on myself. I coached volleyball starting out in my career. I was a high school volleyball coach. I taught biology to 10th graders, which was an experience. I then transitioned to the Division One level as a full-time strength coach. From there, I went to Byron Nelson High School for 6 years as their full-time strength coach. And now I work in the private sector for Fieldhouse Volleyball Club in the DFW area. And then I also run my own business, Missy Mitchell-McBeth Sports Performance, where I do all the things coach education. I do a little bit of remote programming. And as you mentioned, wrote my book.
Yes, all things volleyball. If you want to know about volleyball strength and conditioning, performance recovery, this is your girl. So, we are going to talk through what this looks like for the female athlete volleyball player, really at that, I would say middle school, high school level, going into college. Missy said everything that she does. So, Missy, let's talk about your book. So, Developmental to Division One, which I think every parent on here is listening and they're like, yes, that is the goal. How do I get my kid to a Division One program? So it really lays out a framework on like how athletes can build strength as they grow. So I know we started talking about this book like way before it came out, but talk to us a little bit about like what was your reasoning behind wanting to get it out there? What does it include? Who's it for, et cetera?
I should have a great canned answer for this, and I don't, so I'm going to tell the real
All right.
one.
Yeah. No, I love it. Let's do it.
Basically, so as I mentioned, I'd been a high school coach. I also played collegiate volleyball. I still play volleyball in friends' backyards. I play beach volleyball on the weekends and in the mornings and stuff. So it's kind of just been my lifestyle, right, to work with volleyball athletes and be a volleyball athlete. And so you would think like, oh, that's what did it. That's what inspired the book. But no, when I was at Byron Nelson, I believe 2019 was the year we won a state championship, and we were also ranked number one in the nation,
Oh,
as they are currently this year and last year as well. So like solid
okay.
program.
Awesome.
Yeah, go Bobcats. Anyway, after that happened, I started getting all these phone calls, people asking, like, what did you do? What do you do with your programming? All that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, first of all, I actually train 12 other sports, 19 other groups. Like, do you want to talk about that? And it was like, no, volleyball, volleyball, volleyball.
Hmm.
And so I kind of honestly fought it for a long time because really I was, again, working with other sports, working with other teams. And the last thing that the boys' soccer coach wants is a volleyball specialized strength coach walking in to train their team. So I kind of fought like the branding a little
Yeah.
bit. And then finally one day I learned just a little bit about marketing. And I
Yep.
recognize that if that's what people want from you, then eventually you need to just give that to people because you don't really get to decide your brand. It's decided for you.
Yep.
So I just leaned into it, which the nice thing is that I have had the rare opportunity to align the thing that I love with what I'm able to do. And so that's kind of where the book came from, is just, again, like my love and experience with volleyball, coupled with the fact that people would simply not leave me alone. So I thought that by
Good sign.
writing a
Good
book,
sign.
people would ask the same questions less frequently, but actually there's been an uptick in answering the
Imagine
same
that.
questions
Imagine
over and
that.
over again, which is not a bad thing. It means people
Yeah.
are interested in the topic.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, Missy and I worked at TCU together for 7 years. of course, working with volleyball. And while I was, I tried out for volleyball in seventh grade B team, and then I went back to what I was good at, dancing. But my sister was a very good volleyball player, played all through college. So I feel like I've watched enough volleyball, I've lived enough volleyball to understand what is happening. But Missy really is the guru, and we all worked together. And our friend Val, that was our athletic trainer for volleyball and basketball, all the different things at TCU. So let's talk about strength and conditioning when it comes to volleyball players. So I think there's a lot of, I'm going to call it, misnomers, misconceptions about training young girls in the weight room and whatnot as it relates to volleyball, parents, coaches. Should we not? Like, should they not be in a strength and conditioning program? Should they just be doing volleyball? So talk a little bit. I've heard you speak on this so much, and I actually listened to Missy do a webinar last night, which was fantastic. But talk a little bit about strength and conditioning for the, middle school, high school volleyball athlete. What's the science say? And then what is your experience on what they should be doing?
So just to dispel any myths, they absolutely should be doing strength and conditioning, not just volleyball. And I think a lot of the fear mongering surrounds the concept of heavy lifting
Yep.
and the fear that an athlete is going to become injured, which to dispel that, the sport of weightlifting itself, which are athletes trying to lift the most weight, has one of the lowest injury rates in all of sports. So that right there tells you that there's nothing inherently dangerous about properly applied and coached resistance training. What's actually true, and I've got some stats here that I'm going to look at and read because
Do
I
it. Yeah.
always mix
They're
the two.
interesting. You were talking about them last night, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was trying to like look at them on the screen.
Yeah, so there's a clear relationship between reduction in injury rate and
Mhm.
resistance training. So acute
Right.
sports injuries, so something like an ACL tear or a torn shoulder labrum from diving on the floor, there's a 50% reduction in those. I'm sorry, those can be reduced to almost a third. So there's actually like a 66% reduction. Overuse injuries reduced by 50%. And then there's something
Wow.
else, like I've known those stats for a long time, but I was reading in a book this last week something that I'd come across for the first time. And that's something as little as a 10% increase in your volume of strength and conditioning, of strength training specifically, can decrease injury risk by 4.3%. And
Wow.
while 4.3% is not necessarily like 50% or 66%, every little bit matters when we're
Mhm.
talking about a sport that's played year round.
Yeah.
So as far as when should athletes start and what should they do, they really can start anytime because again, there's no unsafe age, providing that they're given proper instruction and proper progression.
Got it. Yeah. It's such a like I just think people are so misinformed about it. Obviously, I see you do it at Field House and other, working with all different types of groups. And I've seen you have to like inform parents, like, no, this is okay. This is what we're doing. This actually is going to help your child on the court as it's doing in the weight room. Okay. So one of the things we know about volleyball is obviously the need for like explosive jumping and then landing over and over and over again. So, from a strength and conditioning perspective, how can athletes protect themselves, like their knees, their hips, their shoulders, from all of these overuse injuries of doing those same movements over and over and over again?
They can do strength and conditioning year round.
Yeah.
So, too often, strength and conditioning is relegated to either the imaginary off season that really doesn't exist in middle school and high school
Yeah.
volleyball anymore, or the 6 week vertical jump training program.
Mhm.
And the problem with that is that's going to have approximately the same efficacy as really, really dialing in your nutrition for 6 weeks and the other 46 weeks eating Takis and Pop Tarts. Like, how's that going to go
And
for you?
energy drinks. Please make
Right,
sure you add in
energy
Yeah,
drinks,
so
right?
good.
Alani's, like all hail the magic Alani on the volleyball court. So right, like
Ah,
nobody would think that that's going to work from a nutrition standpoint or a
right.
practice standpoint. You wouldn't just throw in 6 weeks of practice and then be like, okay, I'm good for the rest of the
Yeah.
year. But that's exactly what people do with SNC. And then the other big one, the big thing that people don't want to talk about and that really is very impractical in today's volleyball landscape is simply taking time off. And here's the deal, like I'm all about practical solutions, right? Like we can preach that they need to take 2 months off. We can preach that they don't need to play in every game or tournament, but they're going to do those things.
Right.
Tournaments are important. Practice is important. Even taking reps in private lessons, important because the skill demands of the sport of volleyball in 2025 are huge. And
Hmm.
it's at younger and younger ages that you're starting to see the separation
Yeah,
there.
you used to not even be able to play. I
However,
think my sister couldn't play till she was 12, like in club, and now they play very young.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Like my start in volleyball, which I talk about in my book, my start in volleyball was PE. It was like a 3 week PE unit. And like you got on the team by how
Yeah.
many out of 10 serves could you get in the court? And then I didn't play again until the
Yeah.
seventh grade. And it
Yeah.
was just like a cold tryout. Were you athletic? You know, the game's
Yeah.
completely changed.
Totally.
But with that time off piece, I think parents and coaches too often put kids in this like meat grinder situation where it's just this constant like, I've got a game, so I've got to practice for it. Well, now all of a sudden I've got to take practice reps in lessons. Find a day off in there somewhere. Like
Yep.
find 1 to 2 days per week that you can take that off. And it's really not just about, the prevention of overuse injuries. It's also about performance because the thing with injury reduction is, and this was pointed out to me, we can't sell the injuries that didn't happen, right? Because we can't prove that they were going to
Yeah.
happen and the things that we did prevented it. What you can sell is performance.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is if I'm playing 7 days a week, I am not playing at maximal intensity. I am playing at this junky 80% intensity, which is also interfering with my ability to learn because we don't learn in a fatigue state. I'm not going to be
Right.
reading a book tonight because it's Friday afternoon. It's been a long week. I presented last night. I had this. The cognitive load has been huge.
Hmm.
Okay. Same thing with kids. They're not going to learn in that fatigue state. So not only is not giving them a day off or 2 days off during the week potentially setting them up for a greater risk of injury, it's also decreasing their performance because like when we get in the gym, we need to go hard, but then we need to turn around and we need to recover so that we can go hard again. And that's how training and nutrition and recovery cycles should work. But the way
Hmm.
that they're currently working is just go, 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 medium speed. And then we get kids in tournaments and they're like, man, I'm so out of shape. It's like, yes, because now your body's being asked to go at 100%
Right.
and you're not physiologically ready for it because you've never touched 100% in training because you never recovered enough to allow it.
Yeah, totally. Man, I know that there's like no off season anymore. I mean, if anything, the off season's almost worse than in season with the amount they train. I mean, the idea of recovery and what's interesting, like working in professional sports, I think it's so interesting because like they do value recovery in professional sports. They're serious. I mean, you pitch a Major League Baseball game, you're not pitching for like 4 or 5 days. I mean, that's it. And I feel like in younger sports, college, even obviously, you just don't like they just don't value recovery. And I'm like, well, how do you think your body's going to get better? Like, it's baffling to me, absolutely baffling. Okay,
Agreed.
so let's talk about in your book, you talk about obviously building a foundation. I mean, in your book, and every time I've ever heard you speak about building a foundation first, and then you call it like earning the right to progress. So tell us a little bit like what that looks like from your perspective.
Yeah, so everybody wants, again, sales marketing. They want
Mhm.
sports specific
Yeah,
because it looks sexy on social media. It sounds sexy. Parents want to buy it because, oh, my kid's a volleyball player or a baseball player or whatever it is. There is some merit to having sports specific training programs. However, those are predicated on the fact that you already have a solid and stable foundation in place.
yeah,
It's like supplementation and nutrition. If the major players are not there, it really doesn't matter what your
yeah,
supplementation protocol looks like. Strength and conditioning is the same. If we don't have fundamental movement patterns, if we don't have basic strength, if we don't have basic technique, layering in some of these specialized methods simply just doesn't work.
yeah,
The reason, honestly, the real reason this won't be a popular statement with kids, parents, or the coaches who love it, the real reason that people like those specialized methods is they're way easier than getting under a bar and squatting. Like
yeah,
they
like
look
doing the
cool.
basics. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. They look cool. It's like attention grabbing. And then honestly, like a lot of the stuff's really just not as hard.
yeah,
The other piece to that with the foundation is the more you're playing your sport, which for volleyball players at the middle school and high school levels, once again, is year round, the more you're already training those movement patterns over and over and over
mhm,
again in your sport. So we don't need to go in and layer in more of that training with our strength and conditioning program. We need to actually be filling the gaps in training,
right.
which unfortunately looks like squatting both bilaterally and unilaterally, pushing, pulling, hinging, sprinting, jumping and landing, things that aren't necessarily fun, things that aren't necessarily sexy, but
Right.
neither is sitting on the sideline with a stress fracture.
Right.
So it's like you've got to kind of pick your boring. Do I want to be
Yeah.
bored because I'm like sitting injured or
Mhm.
because I suck and I'm not athletic enough to play, or do I want to be bored because I'm coming in and doing relatively the same training day in and day out? And when you
Yeah.
look at, you mentioned the professional level, a lot of times what some of those athletes are doing is really not that exciting because again, like they're not in there for excitement. They're
Right.
getting in there to move big rocks, right? Be as
Hmm.
efficient as possible with that part so that they can then go do their sport specific skill work on the court.
Right. Right. Yep, totally. Well, and with volleyball, it's such a blend. Like you have speed, you have agility, you have power, all the different components of it. Like you said, they're training it over and over and over again. So from your perspective, from the strength and conditioning world, like what type of exercises or training methods are you really wanting those athletes to do that want to develop the quickness, the explosiveness? You're kind of already talking about some of like the basics of what they need, but what are those types of activities that you have your athletes do?
Yeah, so I'll again hit the strength, another vote for the strength category. The other piece I was reading in this book that I already know,
Mhm.
and something that's kind of fallen out of favor in the strength and conditioning community as of late is the fact that, like, yes, there is a carryover between how strong an athlete is and their speed and their jumping ability and their change
Yeah.
of direction ability. Now, how we express that strength has to be context specific, right? So we have to do plyometrics, we have to do change of direction work, we have to do short sprints or accelerations. I think it's less about the methods, so less about what we do and more about how we implement that stuff in the context of what's going on the court.
Okay.
So using plyometrics as an example, if we're in our so take club, a lot of our athletes are done with high school season. They're not doing a lot at school. So November, we can push the volume a little bit higher on our plyometric training because they're not doing as much on the court. Once we move into January, into February, once we start qualifier season, now all of a sudden it's really important that we maintain some level of maximal output. So we still want to have some max height jumps or max height plyos in there, but we have to manage our volume because they're already taking 400, 500 jumps on the court. So we are both maximizing performance and safety by how much we do versus it really mattering the specific type of jump that we do.
Got it.
Because
Yeah.
more and more, like from that perspective or from a speed perspective, like we're not just doing the same thing over and over again. We might do one jump five different ways instead of,
Yeah.
the same jump just to prepare them from a tissue resiliency standpoint to a variety of different movements. But again, it's really about the volume and how we manipulate that around what they're doing in a training program, or sorry, on their on-court training.
Got it. So, kind of in relationship to that, obviously, I want to intertwine nutrition. So, when we start talking about, I'm always talking to athletes, like you've got to fuel the type of training that you're doing. Volleyball is a lot of high intensity training. And so, teaching athletes to eat better is going to be key. But from like your perspective, how do you see that nutrition fits into like these high levels of training? They've got strength and conditioning, they've got on the court stuff, like what you were just talking about when they're in high volumes. Like, what do you see both from a nutrition standpoint? Does, muscle mass, body weight affect it? You talked about some interesting stuff on the webinar, and I want you to address it here in regards to nutrition, performance, and volleyball.
Yeah, so here's a trigger warning.
You
It's
might get me.
2025, so people get upset about this, but there's an established correlation between a less than optimal body
Mm.
composition and performance. There is also an established correlation between, I'll say it in a less nice way, having excess body fat and your injury risk.
Yep.
So, right there are two performance metrics that are related to lean body mass related to fat mass. So, both that comes into a strength and conditioning perspective. We need to be optimizing body mass, or sorry, muscle mass, while also shedding excess fat if we need
Yep.
to. But
Mhm.
there's also the nutrition component that ties into that. We can't eat Takis and Pop Tarts and expect to optimize our body composition, or we can't expect to train hard when we're underfueled. And that's something that I see happening constantly. These kids are eating a pack of Cheez-Its, pounding an Alani in the car on their way
Yes.
in. And then it's like, not only can they not perform in the moment in that practice because they don't have carbohydrates to give them energy, they also then go to Taco Bell on the way home, eat a high fat meal, right?
Hmm.
And so now they don't have the carbohydrates or the protein to repair the loss or the damage to the muscle
Yep.
tissue or the damage to the bone tissue that's happening.
Yeah.
If we don't put those materials back in for our body to rebuild, again, we're not going to recover. And what a lot of people don't understand is that training is not where progress happens.
Right.
It's our bodies rebuilding through the recovery process to grow stronger. But again, if we don't give it the materials to rebuild through quality nutrition, we're going to have a problem in both the short-term performance aspect and the long-term performance and injury reduction space.
I love that. Yeah, it's so funny. I was at a conference this summer. I speak at the same athletic training conference every year. And so I've literally been going to this conference for like 20 years. And so I know a lot of the same athletic trainers. And I'm listening to these people talk to me, and some of these are newer athletic trainers, and they're telling me what their high school athletes are eating and or not eating. And they're telling me the exact same thing that they told me in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 14, 15. I'm like, we're 20 years into this, and it's the same, like different high school athletes doing the same dumb stuff. And I'm like, how have they not learned like the landscape of successfully getting to play in college? It's so much like the curve is a lot steeper. And it's just baffling to me to think that athletes think they can just like not sleep well, not feel their bodies, show up at your practice and think that they're going to be amazing, show up at, in the weight room with like no fuel and dehydrated and think that they're going to be like mentally sharp, physically sharp. I mean, it's baffling to me. And then to your point, recovery, which is where I wanted to go next. Obviously, we think nutrition and recovery, and I know there's athletes, they've got school, they've got practice, they've got lifting, club sports, school sports, all the things. I remember my sister played club volleyball. She initially also ran track, and she was like high jumping and running. And she would like literally go to track practice, high jump, and then go get in the car and go get, wait for it. We live in Texas toast from the fast food restaurant that my parents, wait for it, owned. Yes, dietitian came out of my grandmother ran a fast food restaurant. Wait for it. Sweet tea and Texas toast, and then would go to 3 hours of club volleyball practice. And I'm like, my sister now is like, what was I doing? And I'm like, think about how good you could have been. Just saying. Okay, great. So when you talk about recovery from with your athletes, like you're talking about the nutrition piece, which I concur. What else do you recommend for them to do from a recovery perspective?
Recovery is kind of a four-pronged approach, and nowhere in this are you going to hear put on the air boots or wear compression sleeves or any of that kind of stuff because those are band-aids on a bullet hole.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So the first thing is, again, another vote for strength and conditioning because strength and conditioning is about teaching your body to tolerate more volume over time. That's
Yeah.
it. That's really what it's about, to do
Yeah.
more and handle more. And so the more fit I am, the better I recover between sessions. That's my whole job is
Yep.
to make people recover better. Um, the second piece that you've already touched on is sleep. One of the stats that I gave at the webinar last night is one I stole from 8 million different studies that have confirmed that I think there's something like a 70% less chance of injury if you sleep more than 8 hours per night. That is like it is a free recovery tool, and it's also one that actually feels good, right? The other
Right.
things, it's like I would rather have my Taco Bell, my
Yeah.
chicken quesadilla and Sprite is what my athletes always tell me they want, right? I'd much rather have that than quality nutrition. Like I would
Right.
much rather not train, but sleep, everybody loves to sleep, right? So
Right.
just commit to getting off your phone, setting your alarm, like looking at your wake up time, going backwards from there for your bedtime, figure it out, 8 hours of sleep. Now, is that always practical every day of your life? Absolutely not. If you have morning wave of a tournament and you have to
Yeah.
be on the court at 7 a.m., you may not get that sleep that night before. Look at cumulative across the week. Can
Yeah.
you average over 8 hours? Can you fit in a nap somewhere to supplement that? All right. So sleep is a big one, particularly with adolescent athletes because they're growing.
Yeah.
So it's not just recovering from training, it's also
Right.
the fact that their body needs more fuel and needs more rest because it is
Yep.
getting larger and developing. So, sleep, strength and conditioning, nutrition, we've already talked about. You have to have the proper fuel in order to recover. And then the other thing that I've already talked about is time off.
Yeah.
Um,
Huge.
Really, without any of those four things, they all work in conjunction, right? Like I said, it's a multifaceted situation. There's not any one answer that's going to fix everything if the other three components aren't in place.
Right. It's so interesting because like the where I want to go with this is I want you to talk about like going from developmental to Division One, and it was probably like a year ago. But so I said Missy and I worked at TCU, and so at that time, Coach Jim Schlossnagle was the baseball coach there. So I had him on the podcast, and he made the comment about like going to college, like D1 sports. And he was like, it's not enough to be good at baseball anymore. You better be sleeping. You better have your nutrition down, your recovery down. You better be mentally sharp, have your skill set. He was like, being good at your sport doesn't cut it anymore. And 9 times out of 10, you can't even get into a D1 program. Like you're probably going to have to go to junior college. He's like, it's just that the landscape of sports has changed. I mean, every year I think it gets more and more competitive. So I would just love kind of as we start to close out, obviously your book is developmental to Division One. Like what are the top things that you recommend athletes, parents that they can do if they really want, there's a goal to go play Division One volleyball. What are the steps that you, besides strength and conditioning, obviously, but some of the specific things you recommend to get to that point or set yourself up to potentially have that opportunity?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just let's see, I left collegiate athletics in 2016. So that was nine
We
years
left at
ago,
the same
which is
time.
that's crazy. Like it's
I
crazy
know.
that it's been nine
Believe
years.
me. Believe me.
But even at that time, which it was a completely like that space no longer exists. Like the
Mhm.
the Division One athletics that I worked in doesn't exist. I have no problem admitting that. But I felt like freshmen came in and it was just this huge understanding gap
Yep.
that you're not the number one player on the team anymore and you are about to hit the court with five teammates who are of equal or greater skill than you in most cases, and six opponents. So the speed and the physicality of the game, regardless of whether it was volleyball or basketball, the speed
Mhm.
and physicality of the game tremendously increased.
Yeah.
Now, move into 2025, today's climate, that's actually exacerbated by the fact that instead of recruiting out of high school, coaches can now go into the portal and get a kid that has 2, 3, 4 years of physical development and
Mhm.
being battle tested playing at the Division 1 level already. They're preferentially recruiting those people. Who wouldn't,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
I'm
they're
going to take
better.
an
They're
older, more
better.
experienced,
Hmm.
better athlete, right? So, my best advice is that if you do want to try to play at that level, all of those things we just talked about have to be in order. You have to maximize your athleticism because it is not just about being a great volleyball player.
Right.
You have to have good lifestyle habits of nutrition, of recovery, of sleep. Academics is also going to factor in there because that plays into your stress level, which plays into your injury rate, which plays into your recovery
Mhm.
status, right? Like, and so as much as that's not talked about in the concept of performance or in the context of performance, academics are a big piece. So unfortunately,
Yep.
the answer is what advice? Like all the things.
All of it.
Like
Do all of it.
all the
Yeah.
things have to be in order,
Yep.
right? You have to
Totally.
be willing to put in the work. And if you're not, there's no shame in that. Just
Yeah.
understand that you're not going to go to that level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a game. I mean, it's unbelievable what college sports is now and just how competitive it is. And it's in all sports, obviously. But yeah, huge. Okay. This has been awesome. So I want you to sum this up where people can find you, where people can get your book. We're putting all of this in the show notes. So that is will be there for you to click on, link up, follow Missy, all the things. But I'm gonna let you say it. Anything else you want to say about your book as well?
Sure. Target audience of the book, which you asked me at the first part of the show, and I just realized that I did not answer
All
that.
right.
I wrote that book so that anyone could pick it up
Yeah.
and understand enough about strength and conditioning to build a foundation. I guess my canned answer should be that I wanted to give people a resource that was practical and useful regardless of the context that they were in and regardless of their background in strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
So I've had parents pick it up and read it and work with their kids and love it. I've had obviously high school volleyball coaches, club volleyball coaches. I've had athletes grab a copy. I've had other strength and conditioning professionals or athletic trainers or physical therapists that are just kind of
Wow.
looking for a different perspective in their field.
Mhm.
So really, the book is for anyone and everyone that wants to take the time to read. It's also really funny in spots, and like I say that not because I'm like, oh, I'm so funny, but I went back and read it. You've written a book and you've produced enough content to understand that like you produce, and then you just kind of you don't look at it again, right? And one day I was like, I need to read it. I need to read through a certain section, and I picked it up and I actually laughed out loud at my own
Ha,
writing. I was like, oh, it's
I love
great.
it.
But you can get that at MissyMitchell-McBeth.com. You can also find all my contact information on there. Support at MissyMitchell-McBeth.com is my email address. Yeah. And then I'm active on social media, Twitter
Yep.
and Instagram. My handle is at Missy M. McBeth. McBeth, not like the play MCBETH. And if you forget that, it's in the show notes, right?
In the show notes, you can go follow her very, very easily. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. You are the guru when it comes to volleyball. And this is like, you can obviously, this applies year round because we talked about they're playing year round. But at this point in time, we're headed into club volleyball season. So something to definitely listen to, share out with all of your friends and your little moms that, volleyball players, all the people, share it with your club coaches. I think it can be very resourceful. And Missy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.